Hello everyone, Britton here, and I am back with another review today. I know it's been forever since I've done one of these. But anyways, I'm here to talk about No Country for Old Men from Cormac McCarthy, another McCarthy book. Well, I reread this recently as an attempt to kind of palate cleanse a bit. And of course, this is a heartwarming story with yeah, it's fucking Cormac McCarthy. That joke's fucking stale. Anyway, I'm here talking about No Country for Old Men today from Cormac McCarthy, which I enjoy. I've read this before. I've read this multiple times now, considering, and I just recently reread it on a whim because I was kind of in a bit of a rut and I wanted something a little familiar to kind of get me out of it. And No Country was the book that I used. Anyway, it's been posited a lot on where people should start with Cormac McCarthy. It's a subject that's debated a lot. Excuse me. I know that I've actually wanted to make a video on this exact subject at some point because I know a lot of people ask where should you start with Cormac McCarthy because he tends to he's not like other authors. He doesn't use syntax. He doesn't use punctuation. He doesn't use quotation marks. Nothing like that. So it can be kind of hard to figure out where to start with him, and I understand that. And I definitely would like to make a video on that at some point. It's definitely something I would like to do. But the point I'm trying to get is that there's a couple places you could start. I've known some people have said The Road or All the Pretty Horses are a pretty good place to start with Cormac McCarthy, and I would agree. I think those aren't necessarily bad places to start if you want to kind of get your feet wet with Cormac McCarthy. Definitely get a sense of what his style is like. Um, I mean, there's also Child of God, which isn't very long, but I mean, you'll have to deal with some pretty messed up stuff. So, yeah, I mean, you could start with Child of God as well. Or you could be a complete mad lad and decide to start with Blood Meridian. I've known a few people who've done that. Looking at you, Epic Tales and Dan. But but I don't think it would be a controversial opinion to say that you could probably start with No Country for Old Men and be fine, because this is probably Cormac McCarthy's tightest novel and also his most straightforward novel to date. I discovered this book the way that a lot of other people did from the movie the Coen brothers did, No Country for Old Men, which I have right here. Excellent, excellent film. It's probably my favorite film of the Coen brothers. I mean, it's one of those cases where the filmmakers who made the film were perfectly suited for the material. I mean, the Coen brothers have that similar fatalistic outlook that Cormac McCarthy has. Now, they are at times more lighthearted than McCarthy, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I do have some thoughts on the movie later on, but basically, I think it sets well. And I watched the movie and reading the book. Very close. So if you've seen the movie, aside from a couple of scenes that are stretched out and some other asides, because Cormac McCarthy just likes doing those things, um, you could read this and have a good time, and it's pretty much the same plot beats. Um, but yeah, No Country for Old Men is a tight, constantly moving story. Beside a couple, like I said earlier, a couple of asides in the story, and some scenes like in the movie that aren't like they're more stretched out, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. I really enjoy this book, um, but yeah, it's a good one. Um, Now McCarthy's language in this story is probably his most bare bones to date as well, maybe aside from The Road, because it is very clear, very to the point, very laconic, and but it also at the same time it paints a vivid picture of what's going on. That's just a talent that Cormac McCarthy has. If you know me and Jason, we've fanboyed many times on how McCarthy can paint these vivid pictures with so few words. It's Hemingway-esque at points. But ultimately, this novel becomes if I could again borrow from my friend Kyle Jonathan from the movie Sleuth, it ultimately becomes a three-way dance between good, Sheriff Bell, gray, Moss, and evil, Anton Chigurh. We get one of the most terrifying villains in literary history with Anton Chigurh in the movie as well. I'll admit he is a bit more talkative in this than he is in the movie, but he's always really stoic. He's not really like the judge from Blood Meridian, who's just this bald, just menace who just murders everybody and just loves chaos and death. It's more like he feels like he has to. Again, if I could borrow from uh, Doug Walker on this case, he said that about Anton Chigurh. But every time you get a scene with Chigurh, you get this feeling of sinister, just evil energy from him. And again, it's ultimately a three-way dance, this book, between Bell, Moss, and Chigurh. Now, what do I mean? It's basically this story is about the three of them and how they all affect each other and how good, gray, if you want to call it that, and evil are how that works in the world and how that kind of moves along in the world. Now, as with any McCarthy project, there is a lot of soul searching in this novel. And when you give this book a lot of thought, ultimately this book is about how human beings cope with evil. And you see this a lot with the character of Sheriff Ed Tom Bell, who is one of the old men that this title references. He's old, jaded, kind of burnt out by all the stuff that he's seen, and he's always yearning for these good old days, which I'll get into that in a minute. But he doesn't really know what to make of this world. It seems to only be getting worse. He feels powerless to stop it, and and a lot of this goes into McCarthy's exploration on how human beings, mainly decent, law-abiding human beings like us or even Sheriff Bell in this case, how do we deal with evil when it seems like it's all around us, when it seems like we can't beat it? And McCarthy has always had a talent for exploring all of the depravities that human beings are capable of. I mean, you see it in Blood Meridian, probably at his most extreme. You see it in Child of God. You see it in The Road, and you even see it in this. That people are just people murdering each other for whatever reason that can't be explained. And I remember when I read Blood Meridian for the first time, I actually was thinking a lot about No Country for Old Men because it almost feels like No Country for Old Men is like a spiritual successor in a lot of ways to Blood Meridian. It's not quite as extreme in its violence as Blood Meridian is, but it definitely explores a lot of similar themes about how you can't win against evil, evil cannot be stopped, and ultimately it can't be understood because sometimes people just murder and do all these horrible things for reasons that are completely unknowable to any of us. I mean, I've definitely dealt with a lot of, as I've gotten older, I find that Blood Meridian, or not Blood Meridian, No Country for Old Men has sort of become more timely for me. I'm not old yet, but, I'm a man now, and I first read this when I was, oh God, way too young to read this. That's all I'm going to say. But as as a man now, I've sort of grown to understand this book more because I understand a lot of what McCarthy's going for, and there's a lot of really hefty ideas about aging and the mortality. There's a lot of discussion of that, and it's really sad at times. Again, it reminds me a lot of Blood Meridian because it both explores humanity's capacity for evil and depravity, especially in the character of Anton Chigurh. Again, extremely terrifying villain. Um, and I would say Blood Meridian is much more extreme in its presentation, but I would say that No Country is more grounded in its exploration of how violent and evil people can be, and it's more poignant because if I could quote Carnell from the Falcon Reads, this is probably Cormac's most old man book, where he's just like these damn kids But anyway, I would say that along with All the Pretty Horses, which I actually read earlier this year and did a review for, you can go check that out. I would probably say that No Country for Old Men is probably Cormac McCarthy at his most disillusioned. He's genuinely saddened and disappointed that in our modern world, where we've made all of these awesome advancements in our society, we've even started to create AI, even though it's not technically AI. We're still doing the same shit we've been doing for the past millennia. We're still killing each other. We're still finding reasons to shoot, stab, run each other over, and we're still doing all these dumb things that we've always been doing. And it's really frustrating and it's really sad. And you can definitely tell that McCarthy takes a bit of a shine to Ed Tom Bell because a lot of Ed Tom Bell's thoughts it kind of feels like you're looking inside of Cormac's own thoughts on the world, which is like, geez, this is getting worse. But at the same time, this almost seems like a gigantic middle finger to people and to the idea that people think that there were these good old days where everything seemed fairer and the world seemed more just. This sort of Andy Griffith type of world where everything is nice and pretty and everything seemed to just work out for whatever reason. And Cormac McCarthy is saying, no, he isn't interested in any of that shit. But if he's saying anything, he's saying that violence has always been here, and it will always be here as far as people exist. But and there's a sense in this book that Cormac McCarthy wishes that it was better, especially towards the end when Ed Tom Bell talks about his dad and he talks about the dreams that he had. There's definitely that sense that they got to keep carrying the fire, which ultimately also kind of goes into the road, which kind of goes quite nicely to the road, I'd say. Um, which is also a great novel. I do hope to talk about that on here at some point. But yeah, No Country for Old Men is ultimately a novel about how we cope with evil. It's also about disillusionment as well, because disillusionment is a big thing. And like I said, Cormac McCarthy, I do think somewhere deep down inside of him, he wishes things were better. And it's really sad. But now I bet you guys are wondering, what do I think of the movie? I already mentioned, but I love the movie. I think it's great. I love how it's filmed. I love the just tension in this movie. It almost feels like you're on edge throughout the entirety of this movie. And Javier Bardem as Anton Chigurh is probably one of the most scary villains I have ever seen in a movie. He is just this machine who will not stop until you are dead. He is literally the Terminator at some points. And reading the book again and watching the movie, there are some great lines that were in the movie that weren't in the book. And the movie is very close to the book. Like there's that line at the end when Ellis is talking to Ed Tom Bell, and he's like, "You can't stop what's coming. That's vanity." And I bet Cormac was sitting there watching this movie. He's like, "Damn it, why didn't I think of that? That's a baller line." Or there's some other ones like, oh man, there's the other one where he kills the guy. He kills Stephen Root, and then the guy's like, "Are you gonna shoot me?" And then he turns around and goes, "Well, that depends. Do you see me?" I'm like, oh my god. he's just, ugh. And there's also some bits in the book that are cut out, and it's not a big deal, but there's some moments, like there's this one part where Moss ends up meeting this girl, and she's a runaway, and she's, kind of this streetwise kid, and they kind of start getting along. It's kind of sad, because I did really like that bit. It really is quite a shame that they left that out, but it makes sense why they did. It's not really important to the story, and McCarthy does like the meander, even if this book is his tightest novel to date. But I love the movie. I mean, like I said earlier, I think the Coen brothers' sensibilities, they have a similar kind of fatalism about the world, that the world isn't always a fair place, and evil's always going to exist as long as people exist, and While I say that the Coens are more zany and they do have more heart, I can say, than Cormac McCarthy does, they are very well suited to cover a McCarthy adaptation. And I would say that No Country for Old Men is my favorite adaptation of Cormac McCarthy's work so far. I did really enjoy The Road as well. And The Sunset Limited was pretty good too. They are making a Blood Meridian movie, which, I mean, I don't know how they're going to do that, but I guess we'll see. Anyway, I guess that's kind of all I got for a review today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Check out No Country for Old Men at some point. It's definitely a good book, well worth the read. And check out the movie. If you haven't seen it already, if you've lived under a rock, go watch it. It's fantastic. Oh, jeez. I dropped it. Anyway, I hope you guys check out my Twitter. Check me out on YouTube. Like and subscribe to all that stuff. Check out my Twitter, like I said before. Also, check out my Goodreads and Letterboxd, which have reviews on there, which are far more coherent than the ones you just heard right now. Also, I got a Discord now. Well, I had a Discord, but now I figured out how the link works. So go check it out. Come join me. We'll have a good time. Talk about books, movies, whatever you want. Even comics if you want. Even comics. But, yeah. So, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.